Hey there. I'm Bill, Director of Marketing for Salora ERP, the NetSuite Healthcare guys. Welcome to Complete the Suite, our bi-weekly live AMA and Q&A for anything NetSuite and accounting related. Each week, we'll rotate through a roster of heavy-hitting consultants from the NetSuite space. This week, we're joined by Ali Ibrahim, an integration expert and a NetSuite dev vet, and Sean Wrobel, our number one b-boy dancer and West Coast Territory sales manager. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, Will. Thanks for having me. Hey, Sean. How you doing?
Yeah. Speaking of Sean, he'll be facilitating the floor this week while I run behind the curtains and play producer, stepping in for AB, who is out sick today. So get well soon, bud. So I'll hand it off to you, Sean, and take it away. I'll turn off my camera and I'll see you guys in a bit. Sorry, guys, we're having a little bit of a technical difficulties here. Just waiting for Ollie. Hey, Ollie. I know Sean, I think, was having a little bit of a technical difficulties on his end, so no worries. I can take over for him as well. um, that was a little bit of a little funny there, but anyway, I
That's
think
that's that's what technology does to you, man. You know.
I know. I mean, we're not. I guess that's what we get for being on something that's not made by Oracle. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, just like what we did every week, and we've been doing for every week, and what we did last week. Before we get into the questions, we'll do a quick segment called Sync Up, a
Yeah.
quick look at what's new, what's happening, and what's coming up in the world of NetSuite. Right. So Suite Connect 2026, and the AI. All right, sorry there. Suite Connect 2026 AI
Yep.
feature rollout, right? So the big one recently was the one in Chicago. NetSuite put out 8 AI features on the table, and some of
Yep.
them are things people have genuinely been asking for, right?
Yeah.
The one that got the most attention was Intelligent Close Manager. What do you think of that, Ali?
Yeah. So I think just like all the Chat GPT and all the cloud and all the MCP tools that NetSuite is now incorporating with their product, I think it is going to help clients in various different ways. But I think right now, with everything that NetSuite is releasing, it's gonna be a journey of NetSuite end users trying to understand their own data using the first MCP and LLM connectors, and they're gonna have to get a little bit used to with how they query things inside NetSuite. Because think about it this way: today, what's happening is that a lot of clients you know are not super familiar with all the navigation in NetSuite. And as product evolves, as you onboard new employees in your company, everybody has some kind of learning curve when they come out of a different ERP system into NetSuite. So I think where the entire AI prospect stands and all these 8 tools that NetSuite has built, it is going to make people quietly more efficient and faster on navigating NetSuite, number one, and at least helping clients getting their baseline data. Simple things like, hey, give me my uh, top sales by month, right? And you could easily just query that inside NetSuite using the MCP connector and get the insight. Now, that doesn't mean that it kind of replaces the human mindset,
Yeah.
but it's a good start for somebody to understand what kind of reports are available and what data already lives in NetSuite, rather than going down onto a hunting path and figuring out at, hey, where does it say? So I think for how this evolves for a lot of you know new users who have never used NetSuite, I think it helps them to get familiarized with NetSuite pretty quick.
Definitely, and I think especially since a lot of these are going to be, if I'm not mistaken, right, Ali, it's going to be part of NetSuite next, and we're hoping for a rollout of that in maybe October of this
Okay.
year, right?
Yep.
If so, right?
Yep.
Um, and it's definitely interesting, but there have been already, or NetSuite's already rolling out some new things for 2026.1 release.
Yep.
Um, which really I think might be super interesting from your end, right? There's the token-based authentication deprecation that a lot of these developers are hearing about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The Oracle has finally put a hard clock on it, and I think this being your lane, how big of a deal is this actually? Is it a mark your calendar and don't panic situation, or is it more of a urgent than people realize?
Yeah. So token-based authentication has always been there. It's definitely bigger than what it was before because with different kind of auth options on validating credentials and creating that pipeline. A lot of people actually don't realize though that token based has been in a lot more places than people think. Like look at Celigo as a middleware. Look at NetSuite RESTlets, older integrations, right? Stuff that's been running for quietly good amount of years. Now, what this does is that um, all legacy systems that you're transforming or trying to bring those onto newer ERP systems. I think the new trend is never going to be hey, give me your user ID password. It's always going to be auth at this point. So if you're using something like Celigo today, you're already in a decent spot. I mean, the only thing where I think a lot of people are going to run into problems is with older restlets and custom integrations that were built back, in the day of when we did not have cloud and everything was like on-prem. So I don't think it's a point of panic at this point, but I think a lot of companies have already realized that the more and more middleware and integrations that people are buying now, different products like Boomi, Celigo, and there are many other products out there, and including NetSuite itself, right? They all are now pretty well versed with auth authentication rather than pretty much token based.
Cool. And man, I know we got cut off at the start, and it's always so interesting. I think this is the longest conversation you and I have had, and for the people that are just joining us, if you don't mind, Ali, giving us a quick background on your expertise on integrations with NetSuite.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think everybody who just joined, first of all, happy Friday. This is Ali Ibrahim. I've been in the ERP space now for almost 15 years, and I've been doing NetSuite now for almost 8 years. I started my career in NetSuite as a Celigo integration specialist. I used to be hands-on creating, data flows in NetSuite and piping NetSuite with other third-party systems. And yeah, at this point, I function as a team principal. I'm guiding a bunch of functional teams and integration teams to just make sure that anything that you have um, on your NetSuite ERP system is just running well, and helping teams and businesses figuring out how to structure things the right way as they're needed in NetSuite. So everybody who's joined, thanks for joining today.
Cool. Yeah. And if you've got any integrations running right now, don't hesitate to email Ali. It's or us in general, right? His email's on the webinar sign up. Um, yeah. Uh, Sean, being in the background now, having a little bit of technical difficulties, did just slack us the first question of the afternoon. Ali, do you think you're ready to take a quick look at this one?
Yep.
All right. So Sean's now updating our slides before I go next. All right, cool. So, question number one, quick background. This is coming from Paul out of Philly. He's running NetSuite at a PT clinic. All right. Saying, hi, Salora. We're running NetSuite and looking for our financial and operational data. To get our financial and operational data into BigQuery for reporting, we need transactions syncing a few times a day for real-time dashboards and patient billing items. Right. Sales orders running nightly, and we've been doing manual exports, but it's not sustainable at our scale. And we don't have anyone in house with deep NetSuite API experience. Is this something you can help with? And I think Ali, Sean also slacked you over some of the some more contextual details from this company, from Paul's company.
Yeah.
Again, answer in your own time, but again, I know that you're a NetSuite vet, so if you can answer immediately, that'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So there's so BigQuery, again, a great product out there. They're unlike just the way you have many, cloud-based reporting services, and today everything can connect to pretty much anything using the help of, APIs or direct NetSuite RESTlets. So one of the ways, to easily export your data out of NetSuite and put it into a system like BigQuery, you don't necessarily have to, go through the old jargon of downloading each file, doing a bunch of safe searches, reports, and all of that, and doing all these manual exports and then putting it into BigQuery. We can easily develop an API and a RESTlet out of NetSuite that can hit the BigQuery API endpoint and access your tables behind the scenes, and then get all your transactional and financial data into the right database tables for BigQuery. One, the cool thing about this is that in the last decade, with the help of middleware, uh, we've helped a bunch of, companies to admin their internal infrastructure with integrations where you don't necessarily have to be a full scale blown up developer to manage the systems. However, the initial build is very simple. If you had a developer or an in-house person who understood the technical jargon about all of this, then we as a consulting firm can easily come in and help you build that bridge first. And where we would come in is we would get you all the help that you'd need to identify all your transactions, be it sales orders, purchase orders, items, patient billing information, as it has been stated on this question. Frame all of that into a report in NetSuite, and then connect a RESTlet that goes to BigQuery data, and directly on a scheduled script, um, it would start pushing information directly into the tables that you want in BigQuery. So manual exports, again, not sustainable. You'd have to have a lot of man hours to somebody go in, look at the data, format it the right way, and making sure that BigQuery can ingest it. Um, I know 10 years ago this would not have been possible. But now, with the kind of technology that we're leveraging with AI, data cleanup has been pretty fast. You can clean up your data pretty quickly. You can do all the process mapping pretty quickly with all the, AI tools that are out there. And then connecting third-party systems has been very convenient, more than convenient than, what I've seen in the past 5 years, because there are a bunch of options out there. And NetSuite RESTlet does work very well with their SuiteScript 2.0. And a middleware is also a very good option to pump this kind of information into any external system.
Man, that was more in depth than I was expecting, and you didn't even have to share screen. That's what you get when you have a NetSuite vet on the line, right? I
Yep.
really love that one, and I love that question and the answer as well, because everyone's got data in NetSuite, and obviously a lot of these different companies, depending on their situation, they probably need it somewhere else as well, right? And
Yep.
to just export it manually, it's admittedly really not sustainable, right? And I think while we wait for the next question, Ali, I've got a quick, totally off the topic and something we do with each of the consultants that we've had on here. Um, what does a perfect afternoon look like for you? Like if you close your laptop at noonday, like right now, what happens?
Oh, I would. So perfect afternoon for me is where I'm nowhere near technology. Just leave my phone, turn it off. Uh, there are days, I'll be honest, I just open up my garage, take a chair and sit on my driveway. Nothing's happening, just listen to the birds, or you're probably having a
Whoa.
cup of tea or a cup of coffee. But the irony here is that a perfect day looks for me is where I don't have to deal with technology. That's the truth.
Wow, that actually kind of makes sense. I mean, if you've had to stare at computers for 12, 16 hours a day, you want to be as far away from stuff like that as much
Yep.
as you can. Right.
Yeah.
That
So
that that
um, So the slower life is what I'm after now. I've been in the tech space almost 15 years. So
Wow.
again, I've done things even before cloud was there. I've seen the evolution, and I've seen a lot of things that has happened in the industry, and we're still evolving. And what I would tell my audiences today is that you know AI, automations, none of this can actually replace you know the human art of thinking. But all we have to do is we just have to leverage these tools to make our lives easier than what it is. What they said was, before internet came in, they said internet was going to make our lives easier, but
Yeah.
here we are. So again, it's just another evolution we all have to get through,
Agreed.
and I think it's going to be a pretty good journey for everybody.
Yeah, no, no, I completely agree, and I think that that analogy works. It's kind of the same fear that people had when cars came out, right? It's like, oh, no one's going to be operating horses anymore. No, we just turned into drivers. So
Yep.
now I think with AI and all this, all the tech that's coming up, it's not that we're losing jobs really. We are right now because it's in a transition period, but we're going to evolve.
Exactly.
I agree with you. We're going to evolve as a species, and we're going to evolve as a workforce, and I'm happy to take those steps forward with Salora and everyone else in the space. So okay, Sean just flagged us. We do have a few questions in the queue that are a little bit too involved. He's saying that so we have a system where we flag it green, yellow, or red. Yellow can be a featured question. Green would be something we can add to rapid fire at the end of the show, and red is something that we is a question or are questions that we'd prefer to be able to kind of sit down and have a longer conversations with the people coming in and asking these questions, right? And for those of you who have submitted something that we haven't called and we haven't called your name yet, we see you, but we're really not skipping you. We just want to make sure you actually get a useful answer, not something that we're just kind of passing off to you like, okay, this is the answer, get out of our way, right? So after the show, we'll make sure to log your questions and reach out to you as soon as we can, and to be able to sit down with you really properly with Ali, with AJ, and Sean, and the rest of the team. That would be interesting. Cool. And on that note, Sean did update the slide again. We do have one more yellow question for the day. A quick background for this one. This is coming from Arlen out of Utah. He works for, or they work for a beauty retailer that does a bit of a B2B distribution. So let's go to that next slide. Okay, so we have a suitelet running multiple CSV imports using the assistant finish operation, and they need to go in sequence since each one depends on the last. First is a customer account, import, then invoice generation. If the first one fails, we need the second one to stop and ideally roll back whatever was processed. We also need a script to fire after a specific import completes to update the transaction form on certain invoices since CSV import doesn't support that natively. Can you help us sort this out? That is an incredibly complex setup that they want to be working with there, and I'm not going to even try to answer it, and I'll immediately hand it off to you, Ali. What do you think they should be doing here?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thanks for this question. I think whoever has asked this question is a very smart guy. Understands, solution designing, and how enterprise systems should actually be architected. So, first of all, it's pretty cool that you have a suitelet running multiple CSV imports using the assistant to finish the operation. Now, this is really more about orchestration than anything, because since each step depends on the previous one, you've got to control the sequence, right? Because in NetSuite, anytime you go upstream or downstream on any transaction, it has core dependencies from every aspect. Could be a field, could be the kind of value you're providing in the field, or it could be an issue with the CSV import file itself. Now, rollback in NetSuite isn't always clean. So what I would do in this instance is that you'd have to put a mechanism here where you focus on preventing bad data than trying to undo everything after. And
Okay.
then for the extra logic, you know, things like updating the forms, that's where you just layer in a script after the import finishes. So yeah, think of this as less CS2 imports and more like building a pipeline. So in this scenario, if the first one fails, where the question is we need the second to stop and ideally roll back whatever was processed, that's a great way, to make sure that the team who is handling this process at step one, if there is bad data coming in, you need to have something in the middle in the suitelet that can catch all of that, create an alert. And there are multiple and many different ways of doing alerts on a suitelet where it will just go boom. All right, this isn't going to go further because I have a bad line on your CS3 import, and this is where the error is. So I would pretty much, you know, do a script in the middle of a suitelet where before it goes and imports everything, you're reading all the data, making sure that the data that you want to put on the invoices is good. And if a rollback has to happen, it has to happen on the very first step before you can go down to the second step.
Oh, oh,
and
that's
and and if I'd like to just quickly chime in. The first
good.
thing is said is that first is a customer account import, right? Then you have the invoice generation. So in order to create an invoice, you're gonna need to have a customer, number one. So your CS3 import, when you're doing that import, you could be doing an import for the invoice where you have already tied which customer you need this invoice to be created for. Now, if your file is bad, then when you're running the suitelet, right at that time, it needs to go and detect if you have a missing metadata for the customer information. And right at that point, you can give a nice pop-up alert, stop the engine from going any further so the person can actually go back, review the CSV import, and re-import the file again to go and run the suitelet.
Wow. Again, another in-depth answer from Ali. You still haven't opened a single user guide. It's just off the top of the dome. Before we do move on, there is there's a few questions coming in about this specific topic. There's one that honestly is something that a lot of people do get confused about, and is something I definitely believe is worth briefly explaining. What is a suitelet, Ali?
So think of a suitelet in NetSuite as a custom module, right? So think about it this way. If you had to go, and I'll put this in a very simple term, let's say you needed some reporting that you wanted to do where your data input has to come from 5 different reports, right? So let's say you have 5 folders in your hand, and now you have to go pick and match the information from each folder to come up with that one line that you want your end user to read. Now imagine how daunting that is, where you have to go to 5 different places to go get something. What a Suitelet does for you in this way, it consolidates all of that into one page. But essentially, behind the scenes, you still have the 5 folders which is running. But to the end user, all you're looking
It's just a
at
single page.
is a single page. So think
Wow.
about it
Okay.
as a single page, right? And that's the best way I'd like to explain people on how you can do this, because in NetSuite you have a lot of modules on the finance side. You have a lot of modules on various different functions. AP, AR, um, record to report. There's a lot of things in NetSuite where you would have to take multiple steps to go and fetch the data. Now, that being said, it's not that you cannot natively go and capture that information, but there are sometimes a lot of very unique edge cases that customers have where they cannot run multiple things at the same time to go produce a report. So what a lot of you know consulting firms would recommend, and what we recommend a lot of our clients, is whenever we come to a point where, right, where we feel that this is going to be very hard on the customer's day-to-day job to go and figure out all this information from 10 different places, our idea is to recommend a suitelet which will go and join all your data points that are still running behind the scenes. When you build that query, it's almost like running a small data warehouse behind that page. And then we would give you a bunch of filters, right? So you can say that, hey, I want to see a report for, my sales for the last 3 years, but I want XYZ things. And I also want information that's tied to the invoicing in this process. Now, natively, I may not be able to tie all those data joins together, and I would need 5 separate reports. But with the help of Suitelet and scripting, I can cook up some very smart code, and then give the user all the filters that they need to run a report successfully. So in simple terms, if you think about a Suitelet, think of it this way: is a custom page in NetSuite, a custom module that is built for your convenience.
Yeah. Cool. And I think on top of that as well, if I'm not mistaken, Sweetlets, unlike just regular reports and save searches, they can run actions as well, right?
Yeah, that's true. So unlike just pulling data from multiple joints in NetSuite from different reports, a Suitelet can actually go and update a record. You can have multiple different types of buttons. It can kick off the CSV import that we just discussed about on the first question, and it has a lot of features that, if designed right, can become very powerful for any end users.
Got it. Got it. And so Sean on the back end is flagging us to move on to rapid fire. I know we have a few more questions in the pipeline here, a lot about AI and a few about banking. Sean has filtered them through and then kind of created this quick three list that should be able to hit a few specific ones and I guess a general one for a lot of the people that are throwing in some questions there. Are you ready for that, Ali?
Yep.
All right, let's jump into rapid fire. Let's hope that the slide is there. Cool. Yeah, the slide is there. We just switched payment providers and need to uninstall VersaPay. This is specific from NetSuite. What should we watch out before pulling the trigger?
So again, I think WhatsApp is and everybody who is on this call, just so you don't know, WhatsApp is one of the big giants when it comes to, APAR payments portals. It makes your life very easier when it comes to collecting AP and AR payments. With a simple click of link, you can go ahead and make your payments and receive payments from your customers. So this is actually a very common situation. It comes up a lot when teams are switching providers. So first thing I'd look at is what VersaPay is actually tied into. Is it customer records, payment methods, any AR automation or workflows? Then I'd just make sure if all open transactions are cleared or migrated. You don't want to uninstall anything while things are still in flight, right? And once you have
Got it.
migrated all that information, after that, you could probably safely disable the suite app first. You just don't remove it right away, and take a minute to document anything that's still connected to it. And most importantly, just make sure that your provider, the new provider, right, that you've switched out, is fully tested and working before you pull WhatsApp out completely. So it's just a little bit more methodical. You just have to take the right steps. What really matters here is that you have to just make sure that all your open AP, open AR is clear. You don't have any pending payments or receivables that are yet to come, from this portal.
Cool. You know what? The way that you explained it, it kind of reminded me of a NetSuite implementation where you have a
Yes.
cutover date, right? Where you
Yeah.
kind of stop transactions there, right?
Yeah.
And then make sure that everything is aligned before we
Yeah,
plug in NetSuite into your whole software, into your whole system.
yeah.
Cool. All right.
And a lot of times
Go ahead.
what I try and explain, junior consultants or people who are new into the ERP space, eventually what happens, you will learn the tool. You will learn the tool because there's a lot of learning material out there for you to learn the product. But where most people fail, in my opinion, is they don't think methodical. With an ERP system, you got to learn one thing is that what does it do? You have to learn how to follow the money. That's the key.
Yep.
That's what controllers, that was CEO, that's what accountants want to do. They want to follow the money the right way. And the best way to make that happen is that you have to be very, cognitive and methodical in your mindset and thinking that, hey, if I do step one now, have I already covered what I need to first do for step one? And before I get to step two, is there anything between step one and step two that I could potentially miss that could break the process, right? So what I have understood in 15 years of my career is that learning the tool is the easy part, and you only become better and better as you grow more and more muscle memory by being into the system on a daily basis. But to be great consultants and to be great, NetSuite architects, you have to have a mindset of thinking everything from a step by step process, because the moment you miss a step, you know you make the customer fall behind. They get frustrated and they're like,
Yeah.
well, how is that you oversaw something like this, right? So that's
Yeah.
that's been my debate with a lot of people in the past, is that before you pull the trigger, document things correctly, make sure you've run it with the clients, you've set with them, and gone through the action plan, so you have a very minimal risk of failure at that point.
Damn, did not expect that tangent from Ali. So anyone that's listening, that's lots of tidbits of wisdom coming straight from Ali Ibrahim here. So Sean is pinging us again, saying that we're almost out of time. So let's move on to the next question. This one is kind of a bit more specific, but I hope it does hit a little bit of the other questions that came in. And I know we touched on MCP servers and AI early in the call when we were talking about NetSuite's Suite Connect 2026. But again, let's try to answer this one. Did not get a specific name for the user for this, but it's NetSuite's MCP works great with Claude and ChatGPT, but fails with Open Web UI and N8N. Is it locked down to just those two, or is there a fix? So Ali, what do you think?
I mean, to keep this very simple, I think it's not really locked. It's more of an OS issue. I mean, managed tools handle this very well, like local ones don't, right? The ones that you have on prem. I mean, this is all cloud based, right? So you can fix it or just go to direct with like REST APIs, because what's actually happening is more around authentication than anything. NetSuite's MCP relies on auth, and tools like ChatGPT and Claude handle that flow pretty cleanly, like out of the box. So with something like Open Web UI and it ain't, right? You usually have to configure that auth layer yourself, and that's where things kind of tend to break. So it's more of a configuration issue, rather than anything. So there's not really a hard limitation. It's just a little bit
Understood.
more work to get it running properly.
Understood. I hope that answers the question there. And if you do have a little bit more curiosity about Ali's perspective on MCP servers and LLMs in NetSuite, we will be posting a recorded version of this call to YouTube. So watch out in your inboxes. You might see a link to that later today. But yeah, and let's try to move forward a little bit where we were very close to running out of time. Sean's really on my ass on Slack. All right, cool. So this one's again another specific one. We're setting up Australian bank feeds in NetSuite for ANZ Transactive Global. Is it fully supported, or and what should we know going in?
Um, so with this one, Bank feeds, for those who don't know, I mean, bank feeds have been around now for almost over 6 years in NetSuite. Australian banks, it is supported. The Australian bank feeds in ANZ is supported. The main thing to know is that most of the setup actually happens on the ANZ side first. You need the right approvals, nominated user, and the correct entitlements placed before NetSuite can really connect. Good thing about the bank feeds in NetSuite is that the product has actually been improved quite a bit in the last few years. You know, the bank connectivity has also become much better than what it used to be. One thing that really catches people off guard is that the feeds are like forward looking, so you won't get historical transactions coming in. It only starts from the point it's activated. But yeah, I think there there isn't too many issues with the NetSuite bank feeds, but for the most part, we have seen the Australian bank feeds just work fine.
All right, cool. Yeah, and I think our experience working with a few consulting firms from that side of the world kind of helps us informs us a little bit on familiarity with compatibility there, right, Ali?
Yep.
Yep, cool. And I know that was supposed to be rapid fire, and I know that I think Sean put some of those questions in there to kind of trip you up, but you still handled it like a machine. Thank you for coming here today, making some time. I know the company has been crazy busy with so many implementations, so many go lives up in the air, right? You made some of the most technical stuff feel very accessible. Honestly, the 4 years I've been with the company, a lot of the things that you discussed today was the first time I fully understood them, right? And I really appreciate the fact that you walked us through those things. And to everyone watching, thank you for spending a part of your afternoon with us. It means a lot. And if we did not get to your question today, don't worry. Um, Ali, me, AJ, Sean, and the rest of the team will try to get back to you as soon as possible. So just watch out for an inbox or an email from us in a couple hours or maybe a couple days. Ali, do you have any last words? No, that
Um,
sounds wrong. What?
well, I would just like to thank everybody who joined the webinar today. Thank you for having me. Will, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you, Sean, for all the questions that you facilitated, and I think I had a pretty good time. Um, Feel free to reach out, and we're here to help you.
Cool. And yeah, join us again next week where we'll be convincing a grown adult to explain sweet flow to their mother live on camera. I've been Bill. Thank you for completing the suite.
Thanks, Will. Take care, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.